computer is picking up a strange signal. Here, sir, you better take a look at
Hello listeners, and welcome to another episode of Life Through a Prism with your host Rob Tierney. And in this episode we continue to have a chat with my friend Sharon Corvinus-Jones on community and belonging. So during your life and your work and different things, what with that sense of community, what has drawn you to some of your jobs and your career and stuff that you've brought that into? Because there's a direction. Sharon and I have had a conversation about this, and I'm leading this into a deliberate direction. So what sort of work that you've done that you've taken that wanting to bring that community and that sense of welcoming and belonging to members of the LGBTQIA+ community and the general community?
Yeah, well, I struggled, I struggled with my sexuality and my gender identity for a long time, and I really worked a lot of that out by myself. Mm-hmm. So when I worked it out for myself, I kind of went, this was a really hard road to work it all out for yourself. And I did have some help, eventually, I guess, but later in life. But, essentially I worked a lot of it out for myself. And I thought, people shouldn't have to go through that. People really need support to work through that stuff. So I decided then that I'd be a counsellor. Mm-hmm. And so I got a job with working it out in sexuality and gender support and education. So working it out is a sexuality and gender support and education service here in Tasmania. And so I really wanted to counsel, and it was an educated counsellor job. So we did... So I did that education work, which I wasn't so interested in, but I find now I really like. And then we used to do some group work, and I found that bringing young people together in a group, because it's hard to know who you are when there's no one else around like you. Mm. So, and it's easy to feel like you're the only gay in the village, or you're the only, different person out there. And then, so bringing people together and is really powerful. Mm. So that sense of, that meeting other people like yourself. Mm. So that's when I first started doing sort of group work, I suppose. And then I thought, well, it's not only youth. We've got 60-year-olds out here sometimes that, that have never met other people. Mm. And, so they often fall through the gaps. So, so then I did a bit of group work, and I really got a lot out of that. I think they the participants got a lot out of that as well. So then we started doing social sort of stuff as well. Then I started up Connect for Life, which was a social inclusion group, really. So I started that probably 15 odd years ago.
So if I could just ask you, what brought you to to start that? Did you have a passion? Sort of like you were seeing that there was a need for something?
Well, to be honest, there was a situation where we'd lost a few people to suicide from within the communities, and I'm like, and someone said, they died, they heard that some young person had died. Well, they were, I say young, they were probably in their 30s or something, and I'd lost a couple of friends as well, and someone said, they died of loneliness, and I thought, can't we even call this what it is, and I thought, so it was obvious to me that social isolation is the problem, then social inclusion is the answer. Why is nobody doing anything? And then I thought, well, I'm not prepared to not do anything. I'm not prepared to bury any more of my friends without having a go, really. So we started doing social inclusion events and started up Connect for Life and looked at social inclusion for LGBT. We know social inclusion is a really big part of anybody. Yeah. No one can care who you are. Social inclusion is really important for people, for humans. And so that's when I started some of that sort of work, and I saw the power in that, and that sense of community that we built within Connect for Life and that as well. And so that sort of started me on my journey of that kind of work as well. So Yeah, so, and then starting to move into the, there was community development aspects of that as well. So, it's, I guess it's all a journey of learning, really, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Yeah. I suppose you ended up working at an organisation in Launceston. That's where I sort of met you. So you were with Relationships Tasmania, Australia. You were working with an organisation that was sort of helping people in that space with inclusion and counselling and project officers and stuff like that.
Yeah, when I was first, at the end of my time with working it out, I worked with the Relationships Australia Tasmania on a suicide prevention community action plan, and we had a partnership with between Working It Out and Relationships Australia Tasmania to create the first community action plan for suicide prevention amongst LGBTQIA plus communities.
Wow.
Well, LGBTI communities, I think it was, but then we keep adding these letters, I forget when they were added. But yeah, so that was pretty exciting, and so I worked with them, and then when I left Working It Out, I got the job as the Suicide Prevention Project Officer, doing community action plans for suicide prevention. So again, we come back to the community.
Yep.
And we're doing community action plans for suicide prevention, but we're also running LGBTI community groups as sort of advisory groups and as well for that community action plan, and that's how that started. Then we kept those groups running as well for some social inclusion and also some advisory sort of role for that as well. And of course Relationships Australia does a whole lot more, but they're a pretty big suicide prevention team as well here in Tasmania. So so I spent 3 years with them, and that's where we first met. I suppose from my perspective was that struggling with my sexuality because of coming through the church system and all that guilt and trauma that came through that, trying to find, because having a physical disability, try to go to groups that are quote unquote normal, and you are there with a walker, a walking aid, and it's sort of like you don't fit in. It's sort of like you're sitting there and they're all talking about their holidays and their cruises and stuff like that, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking down at my feet, not coping and leaving those situations in tears, because it's almost like, even a dog will take the crumbs off the table, when there is, and living in Launceston, there's not a great deal. It's not as big like Hobart, say, where there is more people, or on the mainland, or wherever you may live overseas listening to this. The social opportunities, and if you're not somebody, like I was never one for going into pubs and clubs. Well, being disabled, that's another story, for being into access and stuff. And so there was a person that I knew at a time. It's interesting how circumstances, one goes on to another and goes on to another. And I happened to meet an elderly lady, and she said, would you like to come to a community group meeting? Now, I was, I'm very introvert by nature, shy by nature, with all the trauma that I'm carrying, with all the, why would I want to go to something else again, where everywhere that I've been, I've just been sat down there, have a cup of latte and no one to talk to. So I don't know, I can't tell you why I said yes, but we both knew this person who is now passed away, but she was a very strong person, but a very caring person. So it was sort of almost giving me that little push to go. Yeah. I would say more than a little.
We'll be continuing our conversation with Sharon Corvinus-Jones in the next episode, talking about community and belonging. Until then, listeners, take care and bye for now.